This conference will now be recorded.
Well, Courtney, certainly excited to have you on the podcast. And for those that aren't too familiar with you, if you can talk really quickly, what's your background and what's your journey to your current role with the Kings?
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. So my background, I'm from Indianapolis and born and raised, and I got my career started out there with the Pacers and worked my way up from inside sales to corporate sales out there. And then about 3 years ago, I jumped out to Sacramento, and I've worked my way up to now being the senior director of ticket sales and premium membership here. So I oversee our new season sales and then our premium service department at the Kings. And it's been fantastic being at the Kings so far. And the journey at the Kings has been crazy with us opening the arena and really growing Sacramento. So it's been a fun ride so far.
That was one of my first questions because, obviously since you've been there, the Kings, organizationally have undergone, a ton of changes while still, attempting to find their way on the court. How do you balance the excitement of what's happening off the field, with some of the challenges that you guys have found off the court, or on the court, sorry?
Yeah. Off the court has been, we've really leaned into that. Even we're going into the third season in Golden One, and all we talk about is the development going around off the court, around the arena, and the type of experience that it creates. And I do think, like you mentioned, the challenge has been finding that balance with the team not performing. And I think for the first time heading into year three, like we've had a pretty even story around it just being a focus on growth. And we've been able to talk about our young core really getting into the weeds and focusing on like growing these players from the very beginning. And it's kind of what we've been doing with Sacramento as well. Like we were 4 or 5 years ago building the arena, and then we opened the arena, and now we're still in like the third and final phase of development. So we're hoping, after this season, we'll have both the team and off the court presence that we've kind of been yearning for here in Sacramento. But that's how we've been kind of messaging it to our staff and to our fans.
Yeah, and there is. I think there is genuine excitement for some of the young players that are on the court, but certainly what you guys have been able to do, and I've loved the narrative that you guys have built off the court about the transition to the new arena and what you're doing for the city has been, I think it's something that every team as they're going through those changes should look to try to copy. And so certainly you've now been with two pretty strong organizations as they're seen across the landscape of not just the NBA but of sports business. So along the way and along that journey, who are some of the mentors that you've had along the way, whether it's people you've sold next to or the leaders you've worked with, and what was it specifically about those people that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I think my first mentor was at the Pacers, and she wasn't in the sales department, and she didn't oversee sales, but she was and still is the SVP of HR there. And she really helped me develop my presence and put me on a platform to learn how to sell in a way that involved me leveraging my network. And it really helped me grow quickly at the Pacers. And so her name's Donna Wilkinson, but she literally walked me into our president's office one day to just let him know where I was at with sales and like what I had been accomplishing. And like she really went out of her way to give me advice on how to manage different situations and how to be present in every single scenario that I'm walking into. And so I think hands down, like that relationship that she pretty much started to develop with me day one when I got to the Pacers is like instrumental in my growth. And then I think at the Kings, like one of my coworkers, and she's now the VP of groups, premium hospitality and sales events. From day one, like she took me under her wing and helped me grow my self-awareness and learn how to put people first in the way that you manage everything. And it's not just about process and like getting like a box checked off. And so I think Lisa also was like an instrumental mentor for me. And I tell everybody here when they ask for any advice on like how to grow themselves is find somebody that wants to help you grow and wants to mentor you in your career path. And so I think those two, Lisa and Donna, were huge in my development so far.
That's awesome. And you mentioned two words that, I talk a lot about, and when I've talked on this website and outside of that, that I think are really critical that people wouldn't really consider traditional sales skills, which is presence and self-awareness, which I think those things are so critical. So one of the things that we always talk about with some young sales reps is, make sure that you find yourself and have a presence on the phone, have a presence when you're doing, stadium tours or interacting with people. But it's such a vague word. What does the word presence mean to you, and why is it so important to sales?
I think the word presence for me, it has a ton of meanings, but I think the big one that I try to tie it in with is being mindful in my approach and preparing for every meeting, every phone call that I'm about to make, and feeling like I know what I need to be ready with. And then I think one of the things, especially that you'll see in a new sales rep, is that they lose their confidence pretty quickly. And so I feel like presence also encompasses like finding a way to like fake it a little bit until you really become the type of sales rep or leader that you want to become. And you have to kind of fake that feeling at first. But I think that helps generate a real sense of presence, and people, although you may not feel like it's 100% who your authentic self is at that time, like they feel your presence because you have pushed yourself to find the confidence that you need to like have that level of voice that will leave a lasting memory and tell the story that you need to tell that maybe you wouldn't have told previously. But I think if you don't have presence, people don't buy in to who you are.
No, there's no doubt about that. And I think that's it's a great point for, people who are coaching sales reps and sales reps themselves to really be conscious about creating that presence wherever they are. And you talked a little bit about self-awareness, and I think one of the biggest challenges we have with young sales reps getting into professional sports, it really is that self-awareness. And for you guys being so excited about a new arena, yet having the awareness that this conversation isn't really about you. It's about that person on the other end of the phone, or, whether that's that or it's, awareness in the office of, how you're presenting yourself and how you're talking about yourself. So I guess, touching on both of those when you talk about self-awareness, can you talk about the importance of being self-aware, and how do you think about awareness? Like I said, you guys got such an exciting story. How do you remember to be, not to overrun the people you're talking to, but to be conscious of, that person's the most important person in this conversation?
Yeah, I think we've done a couple of things. The biggest one is we've done some training on just various communication styles and how to pick up and be self-aware of who's in front of you and how you should tailor your story to that and how you should try to connect with them. One of the things, and we actually just rolled this out yesterday, is I think a lot of people just see a past buyer or a business as a number in their activity metrics, and we really want to get away from that. And so we, instead of going quantity over quality, we want everybody as they go into a call or a meeting to be really aware of who they're meeting with and know every single thing that they can find about them, so that their first interaction is this personal touch, whether that's their college swag, where they went to what university they went to, or like a taste of downtown Commons, which is right outside the arena. Like, we want to wow them. And so I think having that type of awareness that it's like the people first and they're not just a number in your pipeline has helped with like remembering to tailor your communication style and remembering that like you need to learn something about somebody, that they don't just spend $20,000 with you to spend $20,000. And then on the flip side, in the office, like I think we do training around emotional intelligence and being self-aware, and not only of yourself but also the people around you, and learning how to manage those interactions. And it's so interesting when somebody comes in out of college, like you would never have thought about that probably when you were in your last year in college, but here, like, there's so many personalities. We've done training on DISC personalities and taught people how to communicate with different people and how to transfer that to your office life and to your meeting life. And I think that's been really helpful in just giving reps like also a sense of presence, but also their sense of awareness of who they're sitting down with every day.
Yeah, and certainly you guys are one of the more forward-thinking teams when it comes to trading like that. But and I'm a huge fan of really understanding your disc personality, and understanding other people's personalities. I know it's impossible to take that and synthesize it into like just a couple sentences, but for those young reps who don't really know what disc is, why would it be valuable for them to kind of go research that on the phone and try to make that understanding for them, what their personality type is and how that'll help them in sales?
Yeah, I think this personality, if you were going to go out and research it, it's important because it puts everybody into 4 different buckets based on their communication style and their personality. And it shows you the way that you like to be communicated with, and then it shows you how the other 3 like to be communicated with. And so by taking the test and then understanding things that upset other people or excite other people or what gets them to buy in, when you're in a meeting with somebody talking to them about a membership, you can immediately identify if there's somebody that really finds value in having like a long, in-depth conversation about their family life and where they went to college and what their kids are doing, or you can tell that somebody is really direct and just wants you to get to the point and they find value in that, and you can tailor it to meet different people's needs. So I think it helps you in a sales setting because, again, you can tailor your communication style, and then it helps you in life in general because you're going to run into every single type of personality type in that test and then alter your communication style to meet that person's needs and wants.
Yes, it's certainly incredibly helpful across the board. There's no doubt about that. And so one of the things that the Kings as an organization has been pretty widely hailed, for being one of, if not the most innovative when it comes to incorporating technology into your sales strategy. Yet, I think the joke is, my guess is you still have telephones and email. So how as an organization have you thought about folding technology into your process?
Yeah, we layer in technology. It's interesting. We were pretty open with our team about how they could approach the different tools that we use, and a lot of people prefer to use one of our tools before they make a call to warm everybody up that way, instead of their first outreach being this cold call or this cold email. So we've really empowered them to do that, and a lot of people will use a text touch point as their first one with anybody before they try to get them on the phone and kind of tee up why they will be calling or what it may be. And I think for us that's helped because we can also, since it's trackable, we've been able to see who's already engaging with us from that first text touch point instead of just making a call and seeing that it went to voicemail and having no idea if we'll ever hear back from them. And then that way they know, hey, this person saw like my video message I sent to them. So they know I'm going to give them a call so I can reference that and be more strategic about how I then approach the conversation on the phone.
Oh, that's awesome. And there's 2 things there that I want to dive into. One on the management side and one on the sales rep side. The first on the management side is I love the use of the word empowered, them to use these technologies. I think there's a huge fear, right, from team marketing departments all the way down to direct sales managers, and that probably filters into some reps about utilizing technology and incorporating technology and empowering reps to do it. So what advice would you give, managers, directors, marketing departments at teams who understand that there might be real value there, but are scared to give 22, 23-year-olds the ability to start using those platforms?
I think the most important thing is that sometimes, one, you do have to let the 23-year-old or 24-year-old fail. And maybe they send something that you wouldn't have recommended. But also in that process, they're going to learn from it. And they're also, if it's set up properly, going to see best practices that have already been created by either current reps or that you've rolled out previously. So in every campaign launch, in every new piece of our story, whether that's the young core around the Kings that are growing or new venues opening up around Golden One Center, we will create content for them and say, hey, think about using this in there. And most of them, just because it's coming from us or coming from their manager, will latch onto that and use it. So we can control it in that way where it feels like they still have the option, but we're recommending something that we've seen work. So I would recommend that. but sometimes they just have to try it. They have to try it out and see like what fits them. And you'll be surprised how many times you'll be like, wow, I never thought of that. Like we have a inside sales rep that came in and started doing Fun Fact Fridays and video messages. And we've had video messaging for 4 years now, and nobody's ever done that. We've never recommended it, but he's gotten a ton of engagement from it. And if I think we would have limited his innovation, we never would have seen that type of video from him.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you think about yourself, as you've climbed the charts now down to the director role, and you think about, where our marketing department is, there's a real bubble that we have about thinking about our own business, and a lot of the best ideas are going to come from those people that have to figure out how to constantly interact with the fans in new ways, and the people that, instead of having the technology invented while you're coming into it, have really kind of grown up with that technology, right?
Right. And it's introduced day one. So day one, they get access to all of this, and they're seeing what some of their peers are doing that have gotten promoted, and they'll probably mimic that for a little bit. And then when we interview and we hire people, like our big speaking point is you get to come in and be an entrepreneur with your approach. And I think for a millennial, that is just so appealing because we're not asking them to come in and make 100 calls. They could send 50 video messages and maybe get a better outcome and find a really cool cadence that works better for their style.
So I've written a ton. So I promise we'll get to the rep thing, but so I've written a ton on my website about the need for sales training to really incorporate the entrepreneurial mindset. What do you do from a sales training standpoint to get reps to think about themselves entrepreneurially? Because there's one thing to say it during the interview process, right, and excite them about that opportunity, but there's another thing to really teach them how to think about themselves that way. What do you guys do to do that?
Yeah, I think in the way that they approach the customers, the training around the sales tools is really important. The other one that we talk about all the time is them leveraging their network around here and basically treating their book of business like it's their client's book of business. So that's been a big one as well. And then we typically we set a process for them, but we ask them to find ways to innovate outside that. And so I think when I tell somebody we're interviewing that they get to be their own entrepreneur, what I mean is that they can go out and if they feel like dropping in on 20 businesses with some gift is going to get them more meetings, then they can do that. And they should feel like they have the option to do that. And that's the best way for them to grow their book of business based off of who they are. And so we'll typically in our training and onboarding process have people come in that we feel like have represented that mindset really well, that are now senior account managers or on our management team now, and share best practices on things they've done. And that's been
awesome.
really helpful for us instead of me talking about it, because I'm not out in Sacramento trying to sell. Other people that have encompassed that entrepreneur mindset have shown them what they've done to kind of build their book up.
I'm a huge believer, right? Sometimes we get so caught up in external best practices that we forget that some of the best practices that we can share are those internal best practices. What are the people sitting next to you doing that are innovative and thoughtful, and while at the same time demonstrating that we can sell, this stuff does work. There are real opportunities here. I think that stuff is super critical within an organization. Another phrase that you use that I really like is this idea of layering in, because I think a lot of times one of the misconceptions is, well, I'm either a traditional salesperson who uses the phone and email, or I'm a social seller. I'm the person that jumps on social media, and we tend to think about those things as an or, when ideally for everyone, regardless of where you are in your sales career or your abilities in one area versus the other, it should be an and, right? Like you should be utilizing new technology to get in front of people, and the phone and email, and using those as a way to kind of create a more three-dimensional sales process. Am I crazy when I say that, or is that really what you mean when you talk about layering it in?
No, I think that's exactly what I mean. I think we still recommend you use the phone, you still use email. We just want it to be using the phone and feeling like there's a stronger chance they're going to answer because they've engaged in some other way that you've seen already. And
Yep.
that could be from a video, or we have our reps right now doing personalized gifts for 20 different leads. whether that's a single game buyer or a business based off of research. And like maybe they drop the gift off first and it's donuts for the office. And then when they come in at noon to meet with them or they call them at noon, like the person's more likely to take their call. We just want them to be more warm before they make the call. But they, in their 10-point touch point process, they probably make 4 calls before they stop trying.
Yep. So for those that don't know, I'm a huge believer in a touch point plan and the touch point process, but there's going to be reps that are going to say, that sounds good. What is that? Like, so how would you describe what a 10-point touch point plan or a 10-point touch point process is to, a rep whose team may not have that, but thinks all this sounds pretty cool?
Yeah, when we rolled out our 10-point touch point plan, when we build it out in one of our tech tools, so it's in Tout, which basically is like a campaign management. So it'll build the tasks for them. It will tell them exactly what to do, and I'll include an example of it. So if I want them to send a one mob video as touch point number 1 to 20 businesses, I will put an example of what that one mob video could be. And if the video would play and it would be the Kings logo and the business logo in the background, and it would talk about bringing the brands together. And so then they could go and create that, and they would send it, and it would automatically move them to the second touch point of the call. And we will give them a call script, and that's just their like structure. They can change it a little bit. We want them to incorporate personalization, and then we'll go through the cadence. And when we rolled out our new touch point plan yesterday, we role played a bunch of it. We made sure to engage so that every single step was really well thought out, and everybody was testing out how they would say it and what they would look to add to it, so that when they went to their desk this morning to start day 1, they were ready to go and had a strong understanding of the whole cadence.
And how long would a 10-point touch point plan take for a rep, typically?
Right now we have it at 12 days, but that's because we have a personalized gift/drop-in in there as well.
So there's no doubt that some salespeople thinking about that are going to go, that's way too many touch points in that short a period of time. I usually call them once every 2 weeks, and then I just assume that they're not interested after I do that for 8 months. So why 10 touch points over such a short period of time?
I think you need to find out what communication style and method works best for each prospect. And if you just reach out with a call once a week, or a call 1 week and then a text next week, you're not giving yourself the chance to capture engagement from one of those methods as quick as possible. And so if I was a prospect and somebody called me today, if I didn't answer and they followed up with a text message for me today, I would probably respond to the text message pretty quickly, because I don't answer calls, but I would respond to a text message. So I think it's our jobs as salespeople to identify what method we can get somebody to raise their hand and say they're interested in something. And that may be day 1, I do a video, they don't answer. Day 2, I do a LinkedIn message and they answer because they're on LinkedIn all the time. And so I think we have to get away from like the long wait on doing touch points, and because you're worried you're going to irritate somebody. I think if you're doing different types of touch points that engage them in different manners, you'll end up getting more hand raisers.
Yeah, and you've got to be thoughtful about the touch points too, right? It can't just be, please meet with me, we're the Kings, right? The touch points themselves have to be thoughtful, because the more they're aware of you and they see you bring value, the more curious that person's going to be. So it's almost a benefit to get farther in the touch point process in some ways, right?
Yeah, and I think like that, to your point on that it has to be personalized. Like we played this Ryan Hawks podcast yesterday that talks about Joey Coleman, never lose a customer. Have you heard that before?
I have.
And he talked about a sales process he went through where the person brought him root beer for their first interaction, and he was like ready to buy because that's the only other thing he drinks besides water. And like this person found out that he drinks root beer and brought him a 6-pack of root beer to their meeting. That, to me, if somebody mailed me a 6-pack of root beer after a conversation, like they were thinking about me more than just me being a number that somebody was going to buy from. And so I think that's the mindset as they go through these 10 touch points is if you didn't do your research, then yeah, they're probably not going to engage. But if you do your research and every time you try to get an interaction with them, you say something personalized that you've learned about them, or you send them something that to catch their eye, like those are the reasons people raise their hand, not because you called them 10 times.
Yeah, and I think that's such a huge point because, I always, when I talk to reps, I always say, game respects game, right? I think they respect your ability to have done that research. And I know some reps who think that may be creepy or, I think the word is like stalking, online. But the reality is that they're putting that information out there consciously, then that's just a way to find a way to make through and create a point of differentiation for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we've talked around a lot of these things. So what are some of these technologies that you particularly believe have created real value in the sales process that you guys use? And what are some of the ones in that you've seen your reps really adhere to easiest?
I think the biggest one that I've seen create value that our reps have jumped on board with so quickly is probably OneMob and video messaging. That is like the first touch point in all of our campaigns that they do. And you can do so many fun things with it. You can put a video in the background of somebody dunking to hype them up. Like you can take it away from the sales process and you could put the school they graduated from back there, whatever it may be. And really put a face to the name and find a way to create a personal touch. So I think on the rep side, that's a really big one that any millennial, as everybody's hiring millennials out of college, would latch on to pretty quickly. I think a second one that we've had for about a year now that I believe has started to create and will create like ample value for us is Conversica. And Conversica is this AI robot that we can dole leads out to, and her name's Sarah Martinez. She will reach out 7 times in a cadence of like 2 to 3 weeks. And it's via email or text message. And she is trying to elicit a response from them for them to say they're interested in learning more about becoming a part of our membership program, whatever it may be. So we're getting these leads that probably would have never responded to a phone call to answer Sarah, and then we're able to assign these new hand raisers out to our reps every time they come in each morning. And so it's just a new way for lead generation, and it's a new way to get warm leads for these reps to call before they have to do their research, before they have to shoot an email, like it's handed to them.
That's awesome. That last one, I know I've heard about it, and I've seen people talk about it, and that one still blows me away. If I'm wearing my VP shoes, and I've got a pretty robust database that we wouldn't necessarily be able to get through. But I want to touch back on OneMob real quick. What do you think is the real value in video as a sales tool? Because that's the one that I think when I talk to leaders across sales teams, I think there's this idea I understand that the generation of salespeople I have has grown up with this, but I haven't grown up with it. And one of the things I always say in response to them was, I remember personally when I started in sales, and this is going to definitely date me, but like people were wondering if email was going to be a real platform to use as a sales tool and a sales message. So why is video so valuable, not just from a rep who's grown up with Snapchat or Instagram story or that, but why is it so valuable to the customer on the other end? Why does it a way to really move the sales process forward?
I think it's a surprising way to engage somebody. And there was a stat I was reading on Forbes probably like 6 months ago that when an email comes through and it says video message for Brett, an executive is 82% more likely to open a video than to read a whole email and respond back, or to answer a call and have a conversation, because it's a different type of engagement. Like everybody visually likes to watch things. And so it's a way to captivate an audience that you probably couldn't have done that with on the phone or through just a regular email message. And so it may not elicit a response from them, but you can then see when they watch it, and you can see how much they watch of it, and you can see if they forwarded it and sent it to other people. And so I think it's valuable because it catches people's attention of all age demographics. and you can personalize the background to have it be whatever you want. It can be the business logo, which I think as a business owner would be appreciated, that you took the time to find the logo, you took time to find out things about the company, and instead of me writing it in an email, I created a green screen video to tell you about the things I learned and why I'm reaching out to you. I think it's
Yeah,
just an innovative way to get in touch with people.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think I think that's one of those things that from a sports industry standpoint, it's a matter of when, not if, and I think that transition is gonna start to come. I want to go back to Conversica for a second because I think there's something interesting to think about and talk about there too. Is you do see more and more teams and organizations, whether using ZipWhip or other opportunities to find ways to communicate with people through text messaging, and obviously email is a form of digital messaging. But what do you see as types of emails and ways that people engage that actually draw people in using a text message or an email? Because that's the thing, when I go to teams, the first two things I hear from reps all the times are, right, nobody returns my emails and nobody returns my voice messages. And yep, I mean, the answer is yep, layering in different technologies, finding what technologies people respond to. But you do need to be thoughtful within those technologies. It's just not doing all of them and finding out which one someone responds to. You've got to be thoughtful on all of them. So thinking digitally, what are some of those things that you're seeing have success actually engaging people?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're just trying to get a ton of people out to a huge open house, and telling them that I think in an automated message that we've done through Conversica, we invite them out to a event for complimentary food and drinks and to learn about membership. You get a ton of hand raisers for that. We've gone away from that because, like you're saying, it's not personalized. So on the rep level, if they're sending it out, in every point of their process, they are mentioning something they learned about that person, and we are using the line, I want you to come down for the month of September to get a taste of our membership experience. We host all these events for our current members at Sierra Nevada Draft House, and I know you've expressed interest in the past by coming out to some Kings games, and I think it would be really cool for you to see what else you could access the next time you come out. So while it talks about membership a little bit, we want them to just get a taste of it and show them some of the things they'd have access to if they came out to the Kings-Lakers game next year and were a season ticket member with us. Like, these are the things they would get. So we try to entice them with that. And then for the rep, like in their text messaging, we tell them to keep it short, talk about one thing they learned about the person, whether it's a company and they learned that they're really involved in the community, or it's a single game buyer that they saw is on the board of a nonprofit. And then we talk about connecting over the phone with a question. And typically we see a higher response rate from like a 2-sentence and a question at the end response that has mentioned something that we know about them, compared to the broad, hey, come out to a free event.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. And I think one of the really underlying things that you've talked about throughout this whole process is, personalization and customization for the person that you're speaking to. How do you get reps to make sure that they do the follow through on that? Because reps get really excited when the sales process gets going, and they can be very disciplined when it comes to that reach out. But once the process starts, we talked a little earlier, they might get really excited about just jumping in and talking about your team and talking to your product. How do you teach them to have that patience, that personalization and customization all the way through the sales process?
I think the biggest thing is always we do morning huddles, and we're always present in there talking and having reps share success stories from ways that they've personalized in the conversation from the day before and how effective that was. So hearing how other people have had success, I think, helps keep it top of mind. And then we really dive into their process. We track everything. We have them log every time they do any research, what they found in that research. And we have a sales enablement coordinator that tracks all that stuff so that we can really see who is following the process. And as they go through it, we can see who's finding success in it. And so I think being able to show the reps the numbers of what has been successful and what personalization has worked really well creates a really good story for them. And when they want, everybody is competitive in a sales environment. If they want to do the same things, like they need to start incorporating that in as well. So we
That's
really hone in on the best practices, and we're always talking about it.
that's great. And I think one of the things, for me, I've always been a big fan about leaning in with the colleges that, that my potential clients and my prospects have gone. And, even myself, I'm a little leery to be like, I saw on Facebook that you have 2 kids. They're adorable. Like, what would you consider, when you're reaching out, like, what would you consider best practices when it comes to information to use to customize? And what are some things you'd be like, man, maybe you should stay away from that?
Yeah, the number one item we put on there is college. Like that's the biggest one. I think if they have found out they have kids, it would be great in the conversation to say, tell me about your family. So we coach them on that stuff too. Is like Facebook is great to do research, but Facebook isn't. It's a personal website.
Mm-hmm.
So we've highlighted like top 2. So on gifting and personalization. So for consumers, we do college swag and college mention. And then we also talk about like the taste of downtown commons. So if we look at their buying history and they came out to a game last year, we will send them something from a newly opened restaurant and say, hey, this wasn't here last time you were down. Wanted to make sure you had a chance to check it out. So we kind of take it away from them personally, but we try to remind them of their experience in the past. And then on the business side, we do college and based like website research. So if they're involved in nonprofits, we mention that. If they're on boards of like the Humane Society or something, we will highlight those things. And we really try to get everybody to stick within those 2 bullet points on each side. And then through the conversation, they can slowly start to add stuff in as they have deeper conversations and get to know somebody more.
That's really good. And before we transition away from the technology side, what are some? I think we talked about one, with one of your inside sales reps. But what are the 1 or 2 things that you've seen, outside of the Fun Fact Friday that you were like, man, that was brilliant. Like, man, I wish I thought of that. Whether it was video or text or email or on the phone. What have been a couple of ways that you've seen people incorporate technology? Like, man, I wish I thought of that.
Yeah, the Fun Fact Friday was a really good one. I always go back to the video. The other one that I've really seen that I've enjoyed is also on the video side, where they've done like a day in the life of a season ticket member, and they
Yes.
recorded a video of what it looks like coming down to the arena for a game, a season ticket member reading the cowbell, and that's in the background of their video, and they're talking about it. Because the reason I like that one so much is you can tell a story, but again, being able to visually show them the story while you're telling them is so impactful. And I wish I would have thought of something like that, or I wish I had that when I was selling to really paint the
Yeah.
picture on why a membership is so valuable. That one's a really big one. And then I have to think of another one. They do a lot of stuff over here. Responding as our AI bot is a really good one too that I'd never seen anybody do, and a lot of them have started to do that as well to elicit a response, which is interesting.
That's really cool. It's fun. It's thoughtful, and creativity spurs creativity. There's no doubt about that. So it's amazing the way that you guys have incubated that and been able to see the benefits of it in the organization. And so taking a step away from the technology side, one of the things that we talk about on the site all the time is finding a way to create a real positive work-life balance. And that is different for almost every person I've had on the podcast. So what's work-life balance for you? And with all the excitement that's been happening within your organization over the last few years, a lot of that stuff is really easy to get caught up and see some things pushed to the side a little bit. So for you personally, what is a positive work-life balance, and what do you do to make sure it kind of stays in the green and doesn't drift into the red?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely hard to have a really strict work-life balance in the sports industry, I feel like, but I have set some guidelines for myself just to make sure that I'm taking time outside of work. So I'm a morning person, so I always get in really early. so that I can make sure that I'm home by 6:30 every day. For me, that feels really positive, that I'm not at the office super late every night, and if I need to get work done, I can do a little extra at home. And then on the weekends, I don't work on Saturdays at all unless we have a game. And for me, that's like my day off, and I like very much uh make sure I'm not on my phone. I make sure I'm not responding to emails, and like I really save it for the couple hours that I work on Sunday night. And for me, that's a balance that I enjoy. Like I am a part of the era where I'm always on my phone, so it's hard not to respond right away. And
Sure.
I yeah, so I think that for me is just sticking to a very structured like schedule for myself and not making allowances on days when I've told myself this is a day for just like me to have my life. Has really helped me feel balanced and like ready to go every time when I come in work and when I'm working in general.
So how do you, and again, this, I think this is one of the perennial challenges, is how do you coach a young rep on that? You obviously, you know when you can see them stressed, or you can see them pressing, and at the same time, if you see people that are really doing really, really well, but you can see, in the future, some of the indicators that that they may be overdoing it, they may be like they may be really pushing themselves in that front. What are some of the ways that you connect with people and talk with people and help them create that separation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just when you're stressed and anxious over work, like you're not going to be at your best, so you're not even going to be providing your 100% self that you would have wanted to be there. So you just need to disconnect. And I think anytime I get that sense from somebody, I tell them like leave early for a couple hours. Like nothing that you're doing at work right now needs to be done this second. Like come in tomorrow, be refreshed, like take time for yourself. Sometimes that's just more important to create a better balance for you. And not everybody can operate on working 12 hours a day every day and like being all ingrained in that. So like when I'm coaching somebody, like if I can sense that they're feeling really stressed, I tell them to leave an hour early. And like I want them to feel like they have the permission to disconnect even if things are really crazy, because for them personally they're feeling too overwhelmed with everything. I just don't feel like people are at their best in that stage. And so I'm a big believer in disconnecting as soon as you feel like you're at that breaking point. And I mean, it's rare. I think as an inside sales rep or a seasoned rep, it's not as hard to balance some of the things, but chasing numbers every month can be really stressful. So I think here we really try to get people to understand that it's not like life or death if you take a couple extra hours off to disconnect.
Whoa, whoa! That flies completely in the face of making 100 phone calls a day and having 4 hours talk time. And I've long been a believer that those metrics. I mean, there's always things that those metrics can help paint the picture. But I think most people now are in agreement that those metrics in and of themselves are it can be pretty useless in terms of what a good day is and what a good day isn't. So when you think about a rep and you think about a good quality day, and I know it differs from person to person, but what has a rep done in a day that they should be able to say, I'm leaving the office at 5, and I did my job today?
I think setting 2 meetings would be really quality, and bringing in 10 new people into your pipeline to try to get in touch with, for me, would be big. And if you're making a sale, like that's, of course, but I like to focus on meetings primarily.
Wait a second. I know you touched on the sale thing, but you didn't say make a sale. Why didn't you say make a sale? Why did you talk about the top of the funnel and not the bottom of the funnel?
I want them to continually be building the bottom of the funnel as they close that, because if they had a meeting and they close it down, that's perfect. But what are they doing to set themselves up for a week from now, 2 weeks from now, the next month? Like that's what I want them to continually have top of mind as they're going through their process.
Yes, that is perfectly said. And I think that's, we tend to coach results instead of coach process. And, I think when we take a look at good conversations and pipeline movement and meeting set, if you do enough of that stuff, your results are going to take care of themselves. And if they don't, then we really need to take a step back and think about what your sales training and it really is needs some help with.
Yeah, Absolutely.
So, for you, what drives you? So I love asking this question at the end because I think it varies from person to person. And I think everyone that we've talked to has different answers. For you, what is that thing that really pushes you when it comes to making a real imprint within your organization and in the industry?
I think I've always looked up to different leaders that have this level of influence that people don't forget. And I don't feel like by any means I'm anywhere near that. But I would love to someday be at that point where I feel like I'm really influencing every single person that crosses my path. And so I think what drives me right now is being able to watch somebody grow from the very beginning and seeing the success they have here and then them going on someplace else to have even more success, and like being able to have these catch up sessions with those people and just hearing how much they've grown from like the first day they started at the King. For me, like I think that's what's really exciting and validating as a leader, to hear people find happiness in the sports industry and grow as a leader or as a seller. So
Absolutely.
I think the more and more I watch people around me grow, the better I'm feeling.
What does influence you don't forget mean? Because I know exactly what you mean, and I can think of 8 people that I might immediately say that I've been lucky enough to have been around that had that type of presence. For you, what is an influence that you don't forget?
I think it's interesting because I think there's people that aren't even in leadership positions that have amazing levels of influence. And so, like, you don't have to be a leader to be an influencer, which I say all the time. But I think somebody that I look up to that has like a very high level of influence is just one, they're really well respected. They're really mindful in how they approach every situation with you. And because of that, you buy into whatever they're talking about. And you will like run through a wall for that person and go to bat and back up every single initiative, campaign, conversation that is happening. And I think that is such like a hard thing to figure out as a leader or an individual in general, to be able to have that type of impact on somebody's career and life, and multiple people's. So I think it's, again, like being really mindful, being able to like get somebody to run through a wall and go
Yeah.
to bat and be like a partner with you. I think a
And you can
partnership is another big one I would say with that.
and you can certainly agree or disagree with this, but for me, I think the only thing I'd add to what you said was that they're fallible too, and they are willing to kind of stand up when they've made a mistake, and they're willing to take responsibility, because you can do all those things, but if you're trying to make yourself perfect around it's really hard to try to connect with that type of person, especially when you know the things that have gone wrong. But those people that are willing to stand in front of it and at the same time of doing everything that you just said, and when things aren't going that well, are the ones that that stand in front of it. That's the only, I think, for me personally, that's the only thing I would have added to that.
Yeah, and they're transparent about it too in
Yep.
those moments. I agree. Like that's a really, really good point.
Well, listen, this has been awesome. I appreciate it. And I'm a big believer in getting a ton of perspectives on the show. And I think certainly what you've been able to accomplish in your career and what the Kings have done to help pull this industry forward are invaluable when it comes to perspective to have on this website. So I appreciate the time, Courtney, and best of luck getting ready for the season.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. This was amazing, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
For sure.